Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk about the film Ugetsu, which was produced in Japan in 1953. It shows the story of two couples who lived in a village. The husbands, they want to earn money, so they produced pottery so they could sell them in another village so they could have lots of profit and feed their families. However, the war was about to begin, and then the troops of the other group were about to come to the city and create chaos. And despite this situation, the husbands still wanted to sell their pottery in another city. One of the husbands, his biggest dream was to become a samurai, even though he was extremely poor. And the other husband, he wanted to keep on producing pottery and to have more profit. The husbands were warned about a wise guy from the village that it wouldn't be wise to seek profit in this moment of war. Anyway, a very short time later, the army of one of the groups, it came from the village. It created lots of chaos and suffering because they took the men for forced labor and then they took the women to work in brothels. But they got to escape at first. And then after a while, the husbands got to return to their home and get the pottery and then to sell that somewhere else. As it was too dangerous to go to the other village walking, they decided to go by boat with their two wives and the son of one of them. Okay, so all of a sudden they saw a passenger from another boat. He was in his last moments of life, and he said that he was attacked by pirates and deadly wounded. So they needed to be careful, and then he passed away. In order to protect their families, the husbands decided to keep one of the wives on shore with the baby, and the other wife, she would go with them rowing. She could row very well, and this is what they did. One of the wives, she was left on shore with the baby, and she was warned to be very careful, and both husbands said that they would reunite with her as soon as the war was over. Okay, then the woman, she was walking with the baby, and we can see that the husbands with one of the wives, they arrived in the other village. They sold the pottery sold well. One of the husbands who wanted to be a samurai, who was married to the woman who was there, the one who rowed, and she took his share of the profits and used that to buy a samurai armor. His wife protested, saying that they should keep this money to feed themselves and to their basic needs. But the husband didn't listen to her. Then the woman, she unfortunately ended up in a brothel, and she suffered a lot because she got lost from her husband. In the meantime, the other wife, who was left on shore with her son, she was attacked by some soldiers who were looking for food, and then she was stabbed and deadly wounded. The little son survived. Her husband wasn't aware of that because he was in another city selling pottery. Someday, the husband of the woman who had just passed away, he was approached by a very rich woman and her servant, and they said that they wanted to buy pottery and that the pottery was supposed to be delivered in her house. When the guy arrived at the house, he was seduced by this rich lady, and she convinced him to marry her, and he didn't tell that he was already married and had a son. Up to this point, he was not aware that his wife had already passed away. Then, after a while, he had lots of pleasure. He could experience luxury that he never experienced, But then this guy was warned that this rich woman and her servant, that they were spirits and that they needed to be exorcised. And then the guy finally told them that he had a wife and a son and that he needed to go home. But of course that the spirits wouldn't allow him to do it. But he managed to free himself. But when he left the mansion, he was accused of having stole a sword. And then he said he didn't do that, but no one believed him. All his money that he earned by selling the pottery was taken, but at least he was not arrested because the prison had been burned down due to the war. And in the middle of all this chaos, he decided to return home and meet his wife and son. When he arrived, it was late at night. He saw his wife and his son, and he was very happy. But actually, he was seeing the spirit of his deceased wife. In the morning, while he was sleeping, he was awakened by an elderly man from the village who told him that his wife had just passed away and that he was taking care of his son in his absence. At first, he couldn't believe his wife passed away because he had seen her, but then he realized that he had just seen her spirit. On that day, his neighbor, the one who was selling pottery with him, he had become a samurai as he wished, and then he celebrated this victory in a brothel. At first, he didn't want to go, but his servants convinced him to go. And while he was there, he realized that his wife was there working, forced labor. And then, of course, that when they met again, it was extremely painful. The woman was in huge depression for her situation. The husband said that he would buy her honor back, which means that he would buy her back and make her leave that horrible place, that horrible profession. And he really did that. So both of them, man and wife, returned home. The man had already become a samurai. Then he quit that and he decided to return to his village with his wife so they could start their lives all over again. Then they met again the neighbor and they got to know that his wife passed away. Then the wife of the neighbor should help to take care of the boy, made food to him. Then the woman who passed away, she was buried in their home. And then it was said that the spirit of the deceased woman was close to her family all the time, and that at last her husband became a better person, that the war was over, and that they should have a more tranquil and relaxed life. He returned to his pottery and he was selling this again together with his neighbor, this time in a much better situation, without war, without pain. Unfortunately, his wife had to pass away in the middle of the chaos, but at least they could restart their lives all over again, to give a good upbringing to their son. And this film has a very good message about ambition, that it's not good to be too ambitious in the expense of your suffering, of the suffering of your family, that they were supposed to be more careful, more prudent, to hide themselves because of the war, not to try to earn money at all costs, and that this extreme ambition costed lots of suffering, especially for the women and children, and that the husbands got to realize after lots of pain that they were actually acting wrong, and they had a second chance to start all over again. A second chance that many people who passed away in the war didn't have. The chance that the wife of one of the neighbors couldn't have. And it's a very beautiful and touching history. The plot is in 16th century Japan, and we can have a very nice glimpse of Japanese culture. However, the message of not being too ambitious, it's something universal that fits every culture and every era. And it's a very, very, very touching film. It's sad, but at least in the end of the film, we can see that those who survived, that they had a second chance in life, and that apparently their lives were much happier again. That's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you!